My name is Josh Madden, and today I'll be presenting my Capstone case study analysis of Apple Incorporated. First, we're going to dive into a little bit of history of Apple, basically where it came from, who were the founders, what margins they had to get over to become successful as they are today, and a few of the products. So back in April 1st of 1976, two college students named Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak decided that they wanted to make their own software. Now, neither of them had very much experience in the software industry, but both being engineer majors in college, they had a little bit of knowledge of how to create software. So with this, they decided to make their first model called the Apple I. Now, the Apple I was just a software unit. It did not include a monitor, a keyboard, or a mouse. So if you were to purchase this unit, you would have to go buy a monitor and the other accessories from other companies. Now, the reason they did not do this is because they wanted to perfect their craft of software before they jumped into anything else. Once they figured out that they perfected their software industry, they decided to create the Apple II. Now, the Apple II included a mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, and the software. But the thing about the Apple II, it was the first computer to actually have color. Now, this is a big step in the industry for Apple because most other companies were not producing color at the time, so this gave them an advantage over other companies. After a few years of success, Apple decided to go from a private company to a public company. Now, this increased their sales exponentially, going from only making around 7.8 million a year to 117 million a year. After a few years of success, unfortunately, Steve Wozniak decided that he no longer wanted to be a part of Apple. This was due to lack of interest in running Apple computers every day, doing the same software repairs. So he thought there was more in life than just doing computers every day. So this incident made Steve Jobs look for a new CEO with him. Now, Steve Jobs ended up landing on PepsiCo's John Sculley. Now, on paper, John Sculley looked like he knew what he was doing, how to run a business and sales operations. Unfortunately, the papers did not meet the expectation that Steve Jobs had, and Sculley began to run the company the way he did not like it. So this led to Steve Jobs leaving Apple for a short time, creating his own company called Next Software. Now, Next Software became very successful due to one factor that Steve Jobs implemented, which was purchasing Pixar Studios. Now, Pixar Studios is a company that makes animations and short films for children, and integrating that with the software made them very successful. So we're going to continue over to the history. For the next 10 years, Apple posted its highest profit margins in company history, but this was not due to Sculley, because his business ideas were not as great as Steve Jobs. And underlying, Steve Jobs had a few ideas that were already set in motion that let Apple propel to where it was back then. Now, one of the main things of this was Jobs actually partnering with Adobe Software. This was an upcoming software company that looked like it was going to be very successful, so Steve Jobs decided to invest and partner with them. Unfortunately, soon Sculley made a costly mistake for the company and didn't partner with their rival company, Microsoft, to license their software. And this lost them a couple $1 million, and Apple was starting to decline in sales profits. So eventually in 1997, Apple decided to get in contact with Steve Jobs and ask him to be the unofficial CEO of Apple again, and this was not made official until 2000. Now we're going to dive into a few products and services that Apple provides. Apple was solely a computer company at first, but once Steve Jobs decided to take back over, he wanted to expand the product market and then just be computers and take over the electronics industry. First, we're going to look at the Apple computers, the first being laptops. So there is a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro. These are two different models of laptops that have different similar but different features. The MacBook Pro has a little bit more than the MacBook Air, but Steve Jobs wanted to make two different laptops, one a little bit more affordable for people who may not have a higher income, and then one with more for people who have a higher income. They also came out with a desktop, which is the iMac. This is their only version of a desktop. They don't have multiple. This is just simply the iMac. Now we're going to look at a few electronics from Apple. They have an iPod Touch, an iPhone, an Apple Watch, Apple TV, and their headphones, AirPod and AirPod Pros. They are also partnered with Beats by Dr. Dre, but they're not the sole producer of them, but they are partnered with them. Apple had a few music devices, which is the iPod Nano and the iPod Shuffle, but eventually they were taken over by the iPod Touch, which was basically a functioning phone without the whole cellular service. It played music and had apps, unlike the Shuffle and the Nano, which some of them didn't have screens and they just played music. Some services that Apple provides is their Apple Music, which is in high competition with a few streamers like Pandora and Spotify. And then also their Apple Support, which is ranked to be one of the best in the country. Their operations hours are basically 24 hours a day. You can send an email and they have an automated system that will get back to you if no one is available to call. But when they're available to call, they have knowledgeable employees that know how to fix the issue that is coming up. Now we're going to look at the Apple products versus competitors. So first we're going to break down the Apple Watch versus the Samsung Galaxy Watch. Both of the devices are able to respectively connect to their product design. So Apple Watch will be able to connect to Apple iPhones, tablets, and computers, and the Samsung will be able to connect just to the Samsung phone because they don't make computers. Now, the superior factor about the Apple Watch, its square design is compared to the Samsung circular design is geared more towards reading messages, tracking fitness, and app usage. It's more shaped like a mini phone screen, so if you have a text or an email, you're more likely to be able to read it better than on a small circular that the Samsung Galaxy Watch provides. We're going to look at the main aspect, which is the computers. And so we're going to look at the iMac versus a Windows computer. Now, an iMac has a more professional, sleek model. So most of Apple's computers, minus the new black ones, they're silver. They're matte silver and matte black, so they have a more sleek look. They just have the Apple logo that lights up. They don't have anything fancy or any designs. It's just professional and sleek looking. The iMac also only has one model, so when companies look to order computers, it's very simple for them to just go on Apple and order in bulk of the same computer rather than having to look through several different models of competitor computers. Microsoft has several different desktops that they sell, but with Apple, you know what you're getting for every computer because there's not a whole lot to choose from. Now right here we have a financial comparison of Apple versus Microsoft, and we can see that Apple and Microsoft are always competing with each other. Sometimes Microsoft, which is the orange, tends to be higher than Apple, but recently Apple has prevailed in 2019. It's 39.41% profit compared to Microsoft's only 34.22 profit. Now we're going to break down a pestle analysis of Apple. I have two things for each of these, so we can get right into it. So for political, products for Apple are assembled in China. Unfortunately, there's no other factories right now that Apple produces. It's strictly just in China. But unfortunately, there's political unrest in China due to the low labor pay. Employees are only paid about $2 an hour, and some of them have to drive several hours to get to work, and they work around 10-hour shifts. The only production centers in China, which saves Apple money, but if anything were to happen with the unrest that's happening in China right now and they were to shut down, Apple would be losing millions, potential billions of dollars if that were to happen. Now, some economic factors. If a change in currency happened, so if the price of the US dollar went up, Apple would have to pay more money to the Chinese workers and producers of their company, so then they would be losing money essentially, or not making as much as they would be. It depends how much the currency raises, and this can happen with any country, wherever they're shipping out to, whether it be somewhere in Europe or Asia or even America. If China decides to raise their shipping price, which they have that power to do, then Apple would have no choice but to pay for the higher shipping costs and potentially lose out on millions of dollars doing that. Some social factors. The popularity among larger countries has helped the company grow exponentially. So Apple tends to target larger cities, larger countries to put their stores in. So in larger cities, there tends to be people of more wealth there, so they'll go to the Apple store first to get their products because they're known for good service and products. Um, Apple also uses their sleek look of their computer for a new age looking product, and it's also geared towards the younger audience. Looks more professional. Um, Now, some technology factors. Unfortunately, cyber hacking is a large issue for Apple. They are a technology company, so professional hackers are able to get in, steal information, steal possible money. Um, and also, Apple is a company based on technology, is such a large market that their products are easily duplicated. So, for example, the Apple Watch compared to the Samsung Galaxy Watch, it may seem different, but they're competing with the same product basically. So one of them took the idea from the other, and this happens with any company. Apple could possibly take ideas from other companies, or other companies can take ideas from Apple. Some environmental factors. Apple computers are made with lithium batteries. Unfortunately, for these batteries, they're very expensive and hard to dispose of. They work very well in your computer, but to dispose of them is going to cost a lot of extra money and a lot of extra time and labor. So that's more money that either consumer that has to get rid of it has to pay, or Apple with their old products that they don't sell have to get rid of. Chinese factories produce a substantial amount of pollution. This could cause disease for their Chinese workers, which Apple would be liable for, and they would have to pay money towards that, which would cost them millions of dollars with the how many workers they have. Now, a few legal issues that Apple has run into. They have started their financial program called Apple Pay, which you could connect your bank account or your debit card to your phone and pay right at the register by simply tapping your phone on the device. Or if you're making a purchase online, you just go to your Apple Pay and it'll put in the information for you. Now with this, the government's going to have more regulation and monitoring, so people aren't getting free money, or they're cheating their way out of buying products or using illegal money that was stolen. Also, Apple has had legal cases involving piracy of music and apps. Currently, this is not a big issue, but back in around 2010 and a little bit earlier, people would do what they call jailbreaking iPods. This is where they would do some kind of hack where they were able to download all apps for free. Some apps in the Apple Store do require to be paid, but once you do the jailbreaking, they'll get unlimited apps for free, and this would cost not only Apple money, but the creators would spend their time and money into making apps that they would lose that money that they would potentially gain from people that would buy it, but they can't with the jailbreak. Now we're going to jump next into a SWOT analysis, and we're going to start off with strength. So the first strength is going to be the brand image. So everybody, basically, if you ask anybody and you go, what does the Apple logo look like? People are going to say it's an apple with a peas bin out of it. It's a very recognizable model, so a lot of people know about it. There's a variety of products. Fortunately, in the electronics industry, there's an unlimited amount of products that you can make. For example, Apple has tablets, computers, phones, iPod Touches that play music, iHomes which are speakers that play music and connect, and you can use Siri through that, and several other products. Now, their employees are very well trained. Personally, I have experienced this. I had to go through a training program when I was applying for Apple before I could even technically get an interview. They want to make sure you know what you're talking about, and whenever you go to an Apple store, the employees are very friendly. They come with you, that can answer any question. If they don't know, they're able to use resources that Apple provides them to give the customer the best experience they can possibly have. Next, we're going to go into the weaknesses of the company. Unfortunately, Apple charges very high prices for their products, and this is due to the high standards that they hold themselves to. Apple wants to be the best of the best. They don't want to sell to what is called a junk market, which some off-brand companies do, where they make cheaper products and then sell them for a cheaper price, saying it's the same quality, but in reality, it's really not. So Apple takes this very seriously. Um, Devices only connect to Apple products. So if you have a pair of AirPods, you're not going to be able to connect to an Android phone or a Galaxy phone. Or if you have an Apple Watch, you won't be able to connect to any other device. You'll only be able to connect to your Apple phone or your iMac or any other Apple product. There's a limited selection on iPhones. So Apple comes out with about one iPhone per year. Now there is different sizes of that same specific model phone. There's different colors, different memory sizes, but the thing is, it's the same phone either way. They don't have different options like other companies would. Like Microsoft comes out with about 2 or 3 different models a year, so you have the choice. If you don't like an application that's provided on one, you can go to the next and buy that one. Some opportunities for Apple, mentioned earlier, there's always room for new products, so Apple can always create a new product. There's endless options in the electronics field. Apple is a global market, so they're able to go to any country, sell their products, and it's a globally known market. The wearable technology industry is on the rise. It's predicted around 2021 where it's really going to take off, but Apple already has a step up in it with their Apple Watch, and right now they're in production with new wearable technology. Next, we're going to look at some threats for Apple. As mentioned earlier, there's going to be rival companies selling similar products for a cheaper price. For example, the Apple Watch is around $400 for the best unit compared to the Samsung Galaxy Watch, which is around $300. So you're saving $100. But if you do have an Apple phone and you try to purchase the Samsung phone, you're not going to be able to use it connected to your phone. You'll still be able to tell time and track fitness, but you won't be able to read your text messages or your emails or any form of communication with that. The Chinese relations that Apple has puts them at risk. Obviously, there's unease in China right now, besides the COVID-19 disease that is heavily affecting the market. There's tension with the workers there. And then the rise of currency, as mentioned earlier, will raise prices, and they're already expensive products. So this could raise $1,000 iMac to maybe $1,200 or $1,300, and people already have a tough time already paying the $1,000 for the iMac. Now we're going to dive into the corporate level strategy a little bit. This is some goals and aspirations that companies have set in place so they can further succeed into the market. So products are designed to complete a specific task. So obviously computers are made to use the internet to search up things, do research, do projects, and hold business meetings. Phones are obviously made to call, text, use applications, take pictures. So each product has a specific design and use set in motion. Apple makes this very clear on their website. They have highly vivid descriptions of what each product does, so the consumer knows what they're getting into and what they're buying. To compete and surpass competitors, Apple holds themselves to a very high standard, as mentioned earlier, and they produce the best quality products. This is why the prices are high. They can justify it that way. Apple products last several years. I personally am an Apple user, and I've been very satisfied. I haven't had any problems. I've had my MacBook for about 4 years, and it hasn't faltered in any way. I haven't had to do any repairs. They make it out of the best quality, where if you drop it, nothing will happen. I don't even have a scratch on it. Also, as mentioned earlier, the product designs are made to look professional. So this is more enticing for businesses. If somebody walks in, they see these professional looking computers, they're all the same. They have the same matte silver or matte black look with the Apple logo. So this is a good strategy set in place by Apple. So companies will be more enticed to buy these products. Apple has continuously followed their guidelines set in place by Steve Jobs. As mentioned earlier, for an example, when Steve Jobs had that relationship with Adobe software, him knowing that it will blow up and end up producing millions of dollars for Apple, he still has these same standards set in place to where Apple is able to discover new things where they can partner with and make money out of. This is what kept the company as successful as it has been. Apple has also strategically placed stores in larger cities. So what this does, for example, there's Apple stores in Atlanta, but not Apple stores in a small town like Rome, Georgia. And the reason for this, there's a more high income target there. so people will be more likely to purchase there if they have high income, and compared to Rome, where it's not as much high income, it's a little lower income place. Now, this is just an example of Apple's net income from 2010 to 2019. I'm not going to read all of them, I'm just going to read a few, and this proves that the corporate strategy is working. So, for example, in 2010, they brought in around $14.1 billion, and then jumping to 2014, they brought in $39.51 billion, and then the very next year, they jumped up to $53.39 billion in 2015. However, there is a year where they went down in 2016 to only $45.69 billion. But Apple, with the strategies that Steve Jobs had left in place, were able to recover and make a profit the next year of $48.35 billion, which is around a $3 billion profit from the previous year. A few material business issues that Apple has faced previously was the change of ownership from strictly Steve Jobs and John Sculley to just John Sculley, where he led the company into the ground a little bit until Steve Jobs had to come and take back over. The supplied product from China, right now there's concerns of maybe some products being infected by the COVID-19, and also the chance of China cutting off from the relationship with the United States with the tension right now, and that could cost Apple millions of dollars. Also, the work environment for Chinese workers. Now, according to the Chicago Times, in an article, some workers, they had to travel 6 hours, to work a 10-hour shift, and only earn $2 an hour for hard labor all day. Also, there was a company that was illegally doing overtime, and Apple ended up shutting down that because that's not tolerated, and Apple had to raise their standards. There's also reports of not being provided the proper safety equipment. Now, this includes masks, eyewear, and ear protection. Now, the ear protection is one of the most important because the sound in the companies is high to where they're required to have ear protection, but some were provided. But knowing this, Apple decided to take more precaution and provide the workers with that. And there's also the threat of cheaper options of Apple products. Some people may rather pay the $330 for a Lenovo computer compared to the $1,200 of an Apple computer, because they would rather save that money than pay for the better product. And this is a big issue in low-income areas where people are not purchasing Apple products as much as they are as perhaps Lenovo, Microsoft, or any other competitor. Now, a few recommendations for Apple that I personally have. There's always room for improvement in companies. It doesn't matter how big or small. There's always room for growth, as we can see with the net income of Apple, that they always tend to grow. Even if there's a year where they drop, they grow the very next year because they learn from their mistakes. So creating cheaper products geared towards the low-income consumers. For example, the iPhone is about $1,000 for their newest model that they come out with every year. When it first comes out, the price obviously drops throughout the year. But sometimes people need a new phone and they don't want to pay $1,000. So I would suggest Apple maybe making a cheaper version with less features, maybe just basic call, text, and email for maybe the older generation or people with low income that don't want all the extra accessories and everything that makes Apple iPhones as expensive as they are. Or possibly a MacBook where it doesn't have the same features as like the phone. It's just a basic, simple internet access and email access where people can just use that instead of having the bar with the different applications or the touchscreen volume bar and power bar that's on the new MacBook Pro, and maybe charge maybe $300-400 for that compared to the $1,200 for the base model of the MacBook Air, which is the lower end of the iMacs. I would also suggest expanding their production facilities. Now, they could expand to different countries across overseas, in Europe, Asia, to create more jobs rather than just in China due to the strained relationships that's happening right now. But I'll also suggest producing plants in America. Their headquarters is here in California, but they do not produce the products. They just distribute them once they get them over from China. This would open up several jobs for Americans, especially in this crisis right now. Technically, it would be a job that needs to be worked, as Amazon workers are working right now and other production companies are still having their employees there. This would open up several hundred jobs for people who may have lost their job during this time. And also in the future when there's still low unemployment, people will be able to go in there and then crush that. I would also suggest expanding your social media marketing presence to several different platforms. Now, right now on Instagram, they have over 23 million followers, which is great, and they can reach the audience through there. But I would also suggest going over to Facebook and YouTube. Now, with Facebook, there's several different ways Apple can put themselves out there. Now, there's Facebook ads where during a video, there's a little section where the video stops when you're watching it, and there's an ad. Apple can be able to pay for parts of that, and the good thing about that, it doesn't matter what kind of video you're watching. You can be watching a movie trailer or a sports clip whenever you're on the video page, and then during that video, it'll stop and then play an ad for Apple. Also, with the videos, Apple can insert videos on their page, and with that, when you click on a video for Facebook and start scrolling through, there's no specific theme. So if you click on like maybe football highlights, it's not going to go to all football highlights. There's going to be football highlights. There's going to maybe cops going on or a cooking show. So there's that chance when you click onto a video and you scroll down, you're going to be able to go on an Apple video. Also with Facebook, there's things where they can create called communities. Apple can create a few communities where they can discuss specific products, services, and whatnot. And then with this, Apple employees will be able to directly contact customers who might have questions in those specific groups. So if there's a group on iMacs, like how do I do this in my iMac, and they answer that question there, and an Apple employee will be able to respond right then and there and get that taken care of. On YouTube, YouTube as a platform is strictly just videos. So with this, there's DIY videos, there's sports highlights, there's several other things. There's YouTube ads where it doesn't matter what kind of video you're watching, any kind of advertisement can go in there, and Apple can pay for a portion of an ad where they can go in any kind of video, whether it be your favorite influencer, favorite sports team, and whatnot. There will be a section set aside during that video where the video stop and then play the Apple ad. Also, Apple can create a YouTube channel where they can produce videos on how to operate things like how to operate your phone, how to restart your phone, or if something happens with your computer, you'll be able to do that from home. Unless it's serious, then they would suggest going to the Apple website. And that is my presentation for the Capstone. Thank you very much.